Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to our coffee times to talk about horror. And today, yes, I'm here with another upcoming books video. We're here to talk about some of the new releases that are coming out in the month of April.
It's coffee time.
It is crazy to think that we are almost in April. Like, what's going on? I feel like January was such a slow month, and after that, everything has been so quick. So, anyway, we are approaching April, and I have a list of around 30 books that are between thrillers and horrors. And I hope that you enjoyed this list. I put it together with some of the titles that sounded more interesting to me. As always, I'm going to talk about the books in publication order. Please do keep in mind that some of these books might be already out in other countries or might not come out in April in others because publication is not always the same in every single country. So these are the books that are coming out where I live in the month of April. Let's start with a mystery thriller. Let's start soft. We have The Museum Detective by Maha Khan Phillips. This is inspired by a true, antiquary scandal that happened in Pakistan, and it's going to be the first book on a series. We follow an archaeologist and she discovers a mummy. She should be really excited, but that investigation collides with the long disappearance of a family member. So it is a classic, I would say, detective story, but I like that in this one we have an archaeologist because I love archaeology. I think it's super interesting. Basically, while she is working at a museum as a museum curator, she gets a call from the police to go where they are because they have found something, and she fears that maybe they found her niece's body because she had been disappeared for a long time. But what she finds there is actually a big discovery for archaeology because she discovers a mummy. Next we have Sour Cherry by Natalia Theodoriou, and this is a horror fantasy queer retelling. It is a retelling of Bluebeard, which is one of, the well-known serial killers, but it has been turned into a tale of toxic masculinity. It has a feminine take to it, and it's also a folk tale for the 21st century. The tale begins with Agnes. After losing her baby, she is called as a nurse to take care of the Lord's little boy, and when she gets there, she realizes there is something wrong with this child because his nails grow too fast, he smells weird, his eyes look almost black. And as the child grows older, a plague seems to follow him everywhere. This story confronts the old systems of gender and power, and the long-held excuses that are always made for bad men. Next we have a thriller called Follow Me by Elizabeth Rose Quinn. This is a dark thriller about a woman that would do anything to find her missing sister. Our main character's twin sister goes missing at a influencer mom retreat, and she is determined to figure out what happened to her. They might not have been in the best terms when her sister went missing, but they are twins and she's going to get to the bottom of things. Adrienne is like, okay, it's been a year, the police has nothing, they're doing nothing, and I'm tired of waiting, so I'm going to do something myself. Adrienne goes undercover and infiltrates herself in the same mom influencer retreat. This place feels like a cult, and that's where the first red flags come. So Adrienne will have to figure out what happened to her sister before she's next. Next we have a YA horror novella that has been just translated into English from a Norway author. I don't want to pronounce her name because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna butcher it a lot, but the book is called Beasts. They say it's something between A Quiet Place and The Road by Cormac McCarthy, so I'm really excited, and there's also not too many YA novellas out there. We are in kind of like a post-apocalyptic world because the world has been overrun by beasts and people have abandoned their cars. There is no more society as we know it, but people still have to depend on each other to survive against these beasts. We follow a 13-year-old boy with his 5-year-old sister as they are trying to get out of the beast's territory, and they're kind of telling their story as the beasts arrive into the world and everything, the journey that they have been through. Next we have a book that I'm excited about because it is a YA horror paranormal thriller, and it sounds a lot of fun. It is called Deadstream, and it is by Mar Romasco Moore. Basically, it is a girl that witnessed on a live stream somebody dying by the hands of a paranormal entity, and she fears that she might be next. So this is something that we have seen done a lot in movies, especially, there were a lot of movies concentrating on chats and streaming services when 2020 happened, but I've never seen this concept translated into a book. One of the movies that comes to mind is Unfriended, and even though it's not the exact same concept, it is also an entity that gets to you through the internet. We follow Teresa, and after the loss of her friend in a car crash where she was also inside of the car, she has a lot of survivor skills, and she is more of a recluse. She doesn't leave her room much, and she loves to watch other people's streams. Then one day, watching one of her favorite streamers, she realizes that there is a shadow behind the streamer, and she fears that something is going to happen, and it does. And this guy, this streamer that is one of her favorite streamers, his behavior starts to change the days after she saw this shadow, and to the point where one day he dies doing a live stream in front of everybody. So she's convinced that it is some sort of paranormal entity that has claimed his life, and now she's scared for hers. The next one is a horror book that I'm also really excited about because just the title sounds fantastic. It is called This House Isn't Haunted, But We Are, and it is by Stephen Howard. We follow a couple that are mourning the death of their daughter, and in order to move on, they decide to move to the countryside. So they buy a cottage and they want to renovate it and start over. But they find life very hard, and they find that grief is something that might be making them see things. So it's their daughter hunting them, or is something else happening here? Moving on to a psychological horror novel called Trip, and it is by A.J. Humphreys. Historical horror fiction author Galen is our main character here, and he goes into the deep Wisconsin wilderness to try to figure out if a myth, a legend that comes from that area is true. He kind of investigates this paranormal, supernatural things because he is very curious to know what came first, the events in real life or the stories. The stories that we are told, do they make us see things that are not there, or do we see things and then the myth emerges from that and it is actually based on something true? It is a very interesting take, and I always loved a good psychological horror, so this might be another one that I have to pick up. Moving on to a book with a very interesting name and cover, and it's called The Cat Bride, and it is by Charlotte Tierney. We are in 1995, and there was an animal that was a tiger lynx kind of hybrid that was a mutation, and he was starting to get dangerous, and he escaped one night and killed someone, so the animal was euthanized. That was 16 years ago. Now a family has moved into the zoo where the animal used to live, and now the zoo is kind of, in shambles. But now there are rumors that this animal that supposedly was euthanized is back. And now for my fans of gothic tales, we have a horror gothic mystery. It is called Their Monstrous Hearts by Jigit Turhan. It is a novel about the boundaries that people will cross to keep their dreams alive. A mysterious stranger shows up at Ricardo's door and tells him that his grandmother has passed away, and he has now inherited her villa with her butterfly collection in it. It is a butterfly collection, but one of those that, they are framed, so they are dead, the poor things. So this is where we start. And Ricardo is a struggling writer, so he's like, you know what, I'm gonna go and move to this mansion in Milan, see if that helps with my creativity. But the house is not exactly in the best shape, and also Ricardo comes across his grandma's diary, and he realizes that her death might not have been of natural causes. Next we have The Cut by C.J. Dodson, and this is a horror paranormal. This is a supernatural horror novel set in a mysterious hotel where a woman that is fleeing from her abusive ex finds herself running for more than just her past. Our main character is navigating her second pregnancy and she's trying to get away from her ex, and this place in this hotel might not be the best place, but it's the best that she can do for now, and the job that she has is also not the best, but again, it's the best she can do for now. She's going to work as a housekeeper in this hotel, so it means that she also gets her room for free, and that is a really good deal for her in her situation. Some weird things start to happen at the hotel. One of the guests goes missing. The manager insists they probably just checked out without saying anything, but our main character is like, something fishy is going on here. We're going to change back to mystery thriller, and we have a book called What Remains of Teague House by Stacey Johns. The Rollins family matriarch dies, so 3 adult children run to the home, and what they find there is a house in not the best condition. They find a lot of grief and a lot of bad memories in the place, but the worst is that behind the house they find multiple graves with dead bodies in them. They think they might be old graves, but actually the earth looks quite fresh, so what is going on? Also, their aunt is in a rush to leave town even though her sister's funeral is about to take place, so what is this family hiding? Next we have a horror sci-fi that was one of my most anticipated books of 2025 because I need to read more horror sci-fi, and that is Cold Eternity by A.S.A. Barnes. Haley is involved with a political scandal, so she wants to run away a little bit and hide, and she decides to go to a planet, to a place that nobody goes to. It has basically cryogenic like tubes with really wealthy people that have been frozen for the future. So she is surrounded by bodies, but they are supposed to be in cryosleep. However, she starts to fear that it might be malfunctioning, and she starts to see things and starts to get a little bit scared. Maybe whatever is on that place is way scarier than what she's running from. We stay, of course, in horror, and we have Doomflower by Jendia Gammon. Camellia is the meanest queen teen in town, and her dad is very rich. However, he got rich because he scams people. He's kind of a fraudster. But she might be actually the only hope for people because there is some extraterrestrial planes are being sent to Earth that mutate. They are spreading like wildfire, and also Camellia has now to work with somebody she despises in order to save humanity. And from horror we jump back to mystery thriller. We have a mystery thriller called The Other People by C.B. Everett. This is for people that love Agatha Christie and Shutter Island because yes, we have strangers trapped in a house trying to find a killer. We have 10 strangers, an old house, and a killer killing them one by one. 10 strangers wake up in an old house. They have no recollection of how they got there, but they know that in order to get out of there, they have to solve the disappearance of a girl. If that was not enough pressure for them, there is also a serial killer loose in the house that is going to pick them one by one. This sounds great. It's exactly the type of thriller that I love. Strangers somewhere locked, trying to figure out who the killer is. So this is one that I have to get. The next one is a book 2 on a series, and I still have not read the first one, but I really wanted to. It is also a mystery thriller but with vampires, and it is called Another Fine Mess by Lindy Ryan. So the first book was called Bless Your Heart, and I thought the concept was fun and I wanted to read it, but I never got to it. So if you did and you're excited for part 2, it's coming out in April. It combines mystery and humor, and I think it's a town where there is a morgue that is run by vampires or something like that. I don't know. I think the people from town start to suspect that there's vampires around them, and I really want to get to that first book because it sounds like such a fun take on vampires. So if you read it, let me know down below if it's worth it. And we're still staying with mystery thrillers, but this time it is a YA one. It is called You Belong to Me by Hailey Kersher. This is a psychological thriller that explores the beauty industry and the wellness industry, but it does have some romance in it. I think it's heavy on the romance side, so just putting it out there in case that's not something you're looking for. Frances wants to live her life in her corner, nobody bothering her, but then she is paired in class for a project with one of the most popular girls at school, and that is the daughter of the wellness guru, the guy that has this huge company with these amazing skincare products. Frances has never been interested in these things. She's kind of like an outcast, a bookworm. She's always been happy like that. But now she has to deal with this girl and, you know, with all of these wellness stuff. I'm excited about this one because the only horror books that I have seen that touch on the beauty industry, the cosmetic industry, the wellness stuff have been for adults. So I'm really excited to see these for young readers because I feel like they are targeted so much with these products and they need to learn of their dangers as well. So I'm glad that this is being incorporated in a YA book. The next one I'm really excited about because it is horror crime with vampires and it's called Senseless by Ronald Malfi. I have read 2 of his books before and I really enjoyed it because I think they combine really well that detective mystery thriller aspect with a more intense horror stories. This book basically follows detectives as they investigate the murder of a young woman whose body has been found on the outskirts of LA in a desert, and her body has been mutilated, and they start an investigation when they realize that this murder is very similar to other ones, so they start to realize that they might have a serial killer on their hands. We jump back to mystery thriller and we have Coram House by Bailey Seybold. This is a haunting novel inspired by true events that follow a crime writer that decides to risk everything to investigate the mystery deaths of 2 people. They are decades apart, but the 2 deaths took place at an orphanage. This places Coram House in 1968. A 9-year-old boy disappears. 50 years later, his disappearance is still not solved. Our main character is a crime writer and she has been requested to write a piece on this orphanage, on this house, and as she starts investigating, she starts to realize that there's a lot of juicy stuff in there, a lot of secrets to uncover, and this one sounds perfect for me because I love this premise a lot, and I also like, of course, that it's inspired by true events, and I really want to read this one. Now we have a horror adult novel, and it is called How Am I Not the Monster by Reda DeBoard. This is an indie book and I think it's only going to be published for Kindle, but I wanted to mention it here because anytime I can, I want to mention more indie or self-published authors, and I thought the cover was fun. A being from another plane of existence is being sent to Earth to harvest fear from a little girl. I also love that premise, not gonna lie. There is not much information about this one, but it might be because the author wants to protect the twists and turns of the story, or maybe just because sometimes the indie books don't get as much information on the synopsis and all of that. Our next book is a mystery thriller called Blood on the Vine by G.T. Falco. FBI agent Lana grew up in a vineyard together with her best friend, and everything was great. She loved, growing up there. However, that was until the day that her best friend was actually murdered in that very same vineyard. Lana's father is serving a life sentence for Jess's murder, so the theory is that Lana's father killed her best friend. Lana, however, has always believed that her father was innocent, and now that she works for the FBI, she's determined to prove that her father is innocent, and she wants to get to the bottom of things and figure out exactly what happened to Jess and who killed her. We're going back to YA for a horror fantasy that has a very fun title, and it's called The Summer I Ate the Rich by Micah Mullit and Maritza Mullis. Brielle loves to cook, but she has a sick mother, and she realizes that her dream of becoming a chef and having that career might not be possible at the moment. Her mom is chronically sick and she has a lot of bills to pay, so she has to be realistic. When Brielle's mom loses her job, she decides to use her culinary skills to try to get some extra money. The rich families love her cooking, and that is because of her unique blend of the different spices, because her family is from Haiti, and so she has a lot of that in her cooking. And a lot of people are trying to guess what some of her ingredients are, some of the things that she uses in her food. What they don't know is that it's human flesh. I'm really excited for this one, not gonna lie, also because this sounds like quite disturbing and messed up for a YA, so this one might be up my alley. Our next book, it's called The Sundowner Stands by Todd Kisling. Jerry just wants to be left alone. He has just lost his wife and he is now an old retired widower, and then he gets a suggestion to move maybe to a retirement home. That's because he wants to change scenery, and then his realtor says, you know, there is this beautiful place called Fairview and it is for people that are retired like you, and then you will not be lonely, and you know the drill. But once he moves in there, he hates it. And I can totally relate because there are loud neighbors, they do a lot of activities, he doesn't want to participate, but they're pushing him to participate, and I would also be over it. But Jerry is like, you know, I don't want to be the guy that complains about everything, even though there's weird noises and weird things happening at night. I'm just gonna shut up, I'm just gonna live my life and let everybody else live theirs. That is until one of the other residents appears at his store one day and tells him, you need to leave. This book focuses on grief, on dementia, and obviously something we are all in one way or another scared of, which is growing old. We're jumping back to YA mystery thriller, and we have Murder Between Friends by Liz Lawson. 2 years ago, the murder of a neighbor tore 3 best friends apart. We have 3 best friends that witnessed a murder, and they think they know who they saw that night, they are convinced, and that person is being tried for murder. Now, years later, a lot of things have changed. One of them, Grace, doesn't remember as well if she really saw what she thinks she saw, and she's having like second thoughts. Plus, Jake is being released from jail due to a mistrial, so that's where we are right now. And I'm guessing this whole book is going to be to try to figure out what happened that night. Why did they accuse this guy? Was he really a killer? Was he not? So it's an interesting mystery thriller. The next book that we have is actually a compilation of short stories. This is an anthology that has horror and sci-fi stories. The book is called Devouring Tomorrow, Fiction from the Future of Food, and it is edited by J.J. Dupois and A.J. Pasquella. Our lives, our culture, our communities a lot times revolve around food, and we have a lot of good memories surrounding food as well. Sharing meals with friends and family, where situations where we would be really happy. But climate, technology, all of that is starting to change it to the point where we might not be able to enjoy the same foods we used to before, and we might not be able to even consume it as we used to before. This is an anthology all by Canadian authors, and it all explores the themes of food in a possible future. Our next book is a book that I'm really excited about, and I have actually this one on pre-order because it's by an author that I really enjoy, and that is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. So both of his other books, Mary and Nestlings, have been a win for me. They have been challenging and weird and very different reading experiences, but I have loved them for that. One night, Jess, a struggling actress, finds a 5-year-old hiding behind a tree, I believe, next to her house, and she's like, what are you doing here? After a violent and bloody encounter with the kid's father, they become runaways. So Jess runs away with this 5-year-old kid that she just found. I'm really excited to read this one and to see what he has to bring to the table, because his books always start with a more clear story, more generic one, and then just things get wild. So I'm expecting the same from this one, and I'm really excited. We have now a horror fantasy that's called Eat the Ones You Love. A lot of food and eating in today's video. So we have Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin. So our main character, Shell, has just left her fiance, she has lost her job, and she has moved back to her parents' house. So when she goes outside and she sees the sign of need help at a flower shop, she decides to go in and apply because she is quite desperate. Shell is very happy with her new job, flowers make her happy, but this story also has a dark twist, and that is a weird relationship between Shell and a big plant that is in the middle of the mall. This might be a little bit weird and quirky, I'm not sure, but if you want to read the full synopsis, go ahead, because I think it gives away some stuff from the story that maybe it's a bit of a spoiler going into the book, and I didn't mention it here, but if it's something that you're interested in, take a look. The next horror book contendant is a book called Scurry by Sean Barber. Katty is not like other girls because she can talk to roaches. It's not a gift that she ever wanted to have, but ever since she was a kid she had it, and that made her different. And where she came from that neighborhood, being different was not a good thing. It kind of made you a pariah and people would push you aside. So at some point she knew she had to run away from there. A decade has passed, but now her mom is sick and she calls her to please come back home. And somebody that threatened her when she was a little girl and almost really harmed her is still around. Moving on to a horror thriller that I'm really excited about because this was part of my March TBR, and that is The Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig. 5 high school friends are on a camping trip when they discover a staircase in the middle of the woods that seems to lead nowhere. One of the kids goes up the stairs and disappears. That kid is never found again, and the children decide to keep an oath of silence. Years later, the staircase is back. I think 20 years later, the staircase is back. So they go back to investigate and try to figure out where their friend went. Our next book is a horror sci-fi, and I love this cover, and it's called Polybius by Colin Armstrong. They say this is a book Stranger Things meets Walking Dead. So I'm already sold, okay? Because those are 2 TV shows that I really enjoy, especially Stranger Things. I'm a sucker for it. This novel is based on a terrifying urban legend about a small seaside town that starts to go crazy, where events start to get bloody thanks to a gaming machine, one of those old ones for old people like me that remember this kind of machines. We follow high schooler Andy that has just moved with his mom to this coastal town, and he's not really happy about it, but he gets a job at the local arcade with video games and he loves that, so that's a plus for him. But the story gets an unusual game of unknown origin and things start to go bad. The people in town experience paranoia, hallucinations, some of them even enter like comas. So what's going on with this machine? The next novel that I would like to mention is a mystery thriller called Yuli Chan is Dead by Lian Zhang. This is a debut thriller in which a woman basically decides to take over her deceased sister's Instagram. Yuli Chan has nothing and her sister has everything except a pulse. Her sister is dead, and she decides to take over all the social media influencer life from her sister. After all, they were twins. Since her sister's body was discovered under mysterious circumstances, she thinks maybe trying to impersonate her is going to lead her to figure out what happened. What she doesn't know, or she hasn't maybe thought of, is that she might be now the next victim. And last but not least, we're gonna end the video with another short story compilation, but this time they are all by the same author. It's called Killer Debt, a collection of murder by Deanna Gunn. The question is, have you ever wanted to die in fiction? The author asked these questions to strangers in the internet, and these are their answers. It's basically, how would you like to die? You know, sacrifice to demons? Would you like to be killed by a vampire? Hacked to pieces by a serial killer? Killed by a velociraptor? So this is kind of like a fun compilation. It's humor, it's horror, and I think it's a fun way to introduce different ways to die in books. Some of them may be in real life, but not all of them, because most of the ones that I have mentioned, I doubt they're gonna happen in real life, you know what I mean? But I think this is a really fun concept, and this one really has me intrigued. Now, how would you want to die in fiction? Leave it in the comments down below. Okay, you guys, we've made it to the end. It has been a long video because there were many books to talk about. I hope that you enjoyed to see some of the new thriller and horror books that are going to be released in April. Let me know down below if there's any other one that I did not mention that you are excited about. Hopefully you found something here that you added to your cart. Sorry, not sorry. And thank you guys so much for all your support. I hope to see you all, as always, in our next coffee time. Bye.